Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of All Day, where we get to be, create, and inspire. And as you know, this is my mission to bring together different powerful people, leaders in the community who are working towards something greater. And today I get to bring in my friend Kelly Tolliday. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Yes, I know both mamas with in summer break with kiddos and businesses, so we made it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
No. So Kelly, why don't you tell everybody just a short intro of, because you also have kind of a multi-business scenario going on.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, it's so funny when people ask for a bio. I'm like, like how do I shorten this down? Like getting my bio into an elevator pitch has been one of my biggest struggles. So I am a wellness travel expert. So I write a lot about travel and how to bring a sense of intentionality and mindfulness into your travels, how to kind of like elevate that experience to the next level. I think what we're seeing a lot of these days is people really wanting to have these authentic, intimate experiences when they travel. And that's something that I have been doing professionally for 7 years now. I am a retreat facilitator, retreat manager. I'm the podcast host for the podcast Transform with Travel, and also a yoga teacher and meditation teacher. So that's how initially like we've connected before through my business
Yeah.
partner. Chloe has worked with you very closely over the past few years. So we have a business together called R&R, and we're a boutique travel retreat company, and we also manage retreats for clients who, let's say, like coaches, businesses, communities who want to run their own retreats but don't exactly have the time or the know-how. We do that as well. So we're kind of like R&R is like your retreat one-stop shop. And then on the other side of it, with my podcast Transform with Travel, I do custom travel planning and advising specifically around like APAC, so Thailand, Australia, New Zealand. I have a lot of experience over there, and a lot of courses and ebooks. And so I just kind of like drill down all of my experiences of pretty much my whole life being, at some level on the road, and just loving the sense of adventure and risk taking. And like I love uncertainty, I love risk, I love not knowing what's going to be around the other corner, and I love helping people get to that mindset as well.
That's great. And what I we were chatting right before pressing record was that you've made it a priority. I remember you telling me this because I was like, how do you guys travel so much with your family? And you're like, well, we made it a priority. And and I love that. So why don't we talk a little bit about like how do we get to a point where we, if travel is something, but you guys, I'm sure, like once you listen to where our conversation goes, you'll see that you could apply this into probably other aspects. It doesn't just have to be travel. So I mean, you're a mom of two. Your husband has his own business. You have your own business. And every time I like open Instagram, Kelly is, where in the world is Kelly?
That is so funny you just said that, because my first blog in 2013 was Where in the World is KP, which was my nickname back then. I literally can't believe you just said that. That's cracking me up. Yeah, so I met my husband traveling. We met in Ireland, we met in Dublin, and we knew each other for 2 days. And then he invited me back to Europe 3 weeks later because his friend had gone home, and he's like, just come back. I was like, okay, why not? And so our relationship has been built on the foundation of travel.
Oh my
And we
God, that's
both
so
have
cool.
a very, very intense passion for travel and being out on the road. And we both feel like we're our most favorite versions of ourselves when we're traveling. Not always saying that we're our best selves, but we are our favorite selves. And so it's something that we always knew was important to us. I lived in Australia with him for 5 years. We've lived in Thailand. We've traveled around Southeast Asia for a year. Like, it is just something that's ingrained in who we are. And so when we were having the conversation about, are we ready to have kids, what does that look like for travel, he is Australian, we have to go back to Australia at least every 18 months, 2 years. That's a big flight. So
Yeah.
it's just something that I don't necessarily say like we sit down every week and talk about the budget and what we're allocating to travel, which does work for some couples, but for us it's just something that we like intrinsically know is part of our annual budget. And it's the same way as like people saying that they want to get healthy, but then you look at their Google calendar and it's not in the calendar for their yoga
Yeah,
class or
right.
their appointment with their doctor. For us it's like we look at our quarter and we're like, what's our travel schedule? And if nothing's on the menu for the next 3 months, well, where can we slot in maybe a staycation? Or maybe we do decide to take that invitation from friends to go to Georgia or whatever. Like we look at that as like, what is our travel schedule for the year? And making sure that we have vacations or time just the two of us, which is very important to us, as well
Mm,
as which trips are we bringing the kids along, what's the safe trips to bring the kids along, that kind of thing.
yeah. Oh, I love that. And like that can lead us into that word of like organization, because as business owners, especially in the wellness field, we have our like non-negotiables. I know I do. It's like if my non-negotiables are like I need to work out, I need to, right, like have quality family time. Especially, we both have little ones, which like right now is kind of like soak it up because eventually they're going to be
Yeah,
like, whatever, mom.
I know.
He al- he already does that, and um, so when you say like, we look at our calendars and we don't have something in there, is there a, like, let's say that you don't have the money for it, or are there things that you'll sacrifice to like make the trip happen? Like, is the trip the non-negotiable for you guys, and like you'll kind of be like, oh, we'll wait to pay whatever, do the upgrade to the house so that we can travel?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have had some pretty big trips over the last few years, and when we ever or like an example of this is we moved into our new house in January 2023. We ended up having a leak. We had to redo the whole house, and that kind of put some of our trips on the back burner. Like the entire house had to get redone, and but the driveway was on our list of things to do. But that wasn't necessarily something that like I can live with not having an updated driveway, right? And so we
Yeah.
decided like, are we going to take this trip to Costa Rica with our best friends in May, or are we going to go to get our driveway done? And it was like literally a no brainer. Like, of course we're going to do the driveway and the back burner, which is now it's currently getting done like as we speak right now. So hopefully it's not too loud.
No, no, no,
But
don't worry at all.
but yeah, like those are the conversations that we have. It even goes down to, do we have a third kid or not, and how would this affect how we
Mm,
travel, why, like where we're traveling, how long we're traveling, how comfortable we're traveling. Like we are currently having these conversations right now, and travel is hands down one of the top reasons like why or why not we have a third child.
that's so wild.
I
And
know.
I still, and I still,
Nuts.
and I still get it, because like I'm also, I'm like 36 countries. Like, where can I go explore? I even did a post today that was very much like I was having a conversation with a coach. We were doing some coaching, and she was like, "Well, what brings you joy?" And I was like, "Traveling. Like that's always been my like go to, traveling." And she's like, "Well, sis, you can't travel so much." And I was like, what? Ari can't? The word Ari can't like doesn't go in the right sentence. So
Yeah.
immediately I like booked a trip to North Carolina, and I booked a trip to Peru. I was like, what do you mean I'm not traveling? This is what we do. Like, boom, let's go. Um, so let's talk a little bit about how you building this amazing business model that you have, right? Where you are travel focused. So this is your niche, wellness travel management. Um, does that give you any perks also in terms of?
So I am a travel advisor, and so I get access to the same level of perks that you would get if you were to book through me. There's certain hotel brands, like groups like IHG and Marriott Bonvoy and Hilton, like Four Seasons. Like there are perks that you get when you book through specifically through my agency. And so
Okay,
yeah, like I
so you have
mean,
an agency.
I can book myself on those as well.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
also things like fam trips, like
Yep.
familiarization trips where countries or hotels will or tour operators will invite you to go check it out so you have a better understanding how to explain that to your clients. And same thing like retreat venues, I'm sure you know, reach out all the time and be like, we would love for you to just come for a week and just go explore. I'm like, I would love nothing more than that. But, and you know, it's, you're a retreat facilitator as well too. It's tough to manage the balance, and tough is a very, very relative term, like first world problems. But
Yeah,
it
right.
is tough to manage. Like I have 2 to 3 trips a year that are at least a week long for work. So that's time away from my children. I have the week that me and my husband are non-negotiable. We go somewhere together just for 6 to 7 days. So that's time away from my children. On top of the trips that we take together as a family, it's like, how much time can I now take to go take this awesome fam trip
Yeah,
opportunity in the national parks? Like it is, at least in these early stages of motherhood, my daughters are almost 4 and almost 2. It is a matter of figuring out like this, being very strategic about what you say
yeah,
yes to and what you say no to, especially in an industry where it is like, you, in order to be a travel expert, like you need to go travel and experience it. And so yeah, it's like part of
yes,
that, kind of part of the give and take and the sacrifice being in the industry that we're in. And so it really comes down to how passionate, how purpose driven, how strategic you
yeah.
could be with your time, and being very intentional with that.
So let's talk a little bit about, like, if for the people who are listening, who are wanting to not just travel, because travel, I think, you can make that happen, but like, let's talk about retreats, and retreats being a way that you can, not only grow your business, and that you can really move the way that you work in a much, I'm going to say, not only deeper. Sometimes that word like drives me crazy, like, let's go deep, but
Mm,
effective. Okay, more effective. I think that's better for me. So since we're both retreat leaders, but now you help like retreat management, I would love to pick your brain on what are some things that a retreat leader can do to maximize profit. So that'll be
mm,
one, because you work so closely with the venues, and I've shared this before, that like sometimes like the venue wants you, right? The venue wants you to bring your 10 people because they don't have to fill their hotel or their retreat center. You're doing it for them.
exactly.
But let's talk a little bit about that. Like, what have you seen that has helped you, both you and Chloe, make more money? And what are some tips that you can give people?
Yeah. It's, I mean, when it comes down to it, people ask us all the time, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but people ask us all the time, why don't we run so many retreats in the United States? And it does kind of come down to cost. Like, it is very expensive to hire an Airbnb, to go to a hotel. The food is a lot more expensive if you bring in a chef. So we do typically look at international locations
Mhm.
that are, we usually try to do one that's nearby most of our communities in South Florida. So that might look like the Caribbean, Costa Rica, Central America, South America. And we usually will do one. Oh, oops, sorry, my headphones just popped out. All good? You hear me? Okay. Okay. And then we do also do usually one that's a little bit farther away, so a Europe or in Asia. And so for us, that's like kind of looking at like profit margins that way, is what will the total cost be based on the country that we're going to, and then of course trying to weigh up, well, what would it cost the guest to also pay our retreat fee and also get there, because although we're not the cheapest retreat in the world, we really try to not be the most expensive retreat in the world, because we want the average person to be able to take this time for themselves.
Yeah.
Another thing that we really try to work on is, as you mentioned, like this is a very symbiotic relationship between you and the venue. Not only are you, like you said, potentially maxing out their entire boutique hotel for a week, you're also bringing in 10 to 12 to 15 guests, sometimes 20, who would then go off into their ecosystems of friends, and they would go off into their ecosystems of friends and tell them, oh my god, I saw this amazing boutique. So they get these like free travel agents basically from the retreat guests. So we use this as best as we can to our advantage, and we always try to see if there's any way that, if we have a minimum of 8 guests or a minimum of 10 guests, can we get the facilitator room for free or comped? And that's one way to help your overall costs go down. Sometimes they will take our food for free. Sometimes they'll take our transfers for free. And free is, it's comped because of what we're doing for them. So that's one way to really drive your costs down in that way. Another thing that I always like to say is like, if you don't know, or sorry, if you don't ask, you won't know. And so there's always an option to
Love
be
that.
able to negotiate like initial deposits. There's a
Yeah.
maybe you just need a couple more payment plans so you're not putting $12,000 up front on a venue. Like just ask, and being as transparent as you can about why you're asking, and building relationships with venues around the world is going to help you get lower costs. One more thing
Yeah.
I'll add here on
Yeah.
venue, because there's so much you can go in, is if you are trying to go down like the Airbnb route, like a house, because you want a really
Mhm.
cozy, tight container vibe, instead of maybe going to a hotel, which has a whole nother set of pros and cons. See if you find an epic house on Airbnb, try your best to either Google image, reverse image search, or the name of their Airbnb,
Mhm.
search for it. You might find them that they have their own website online. And if you find them on their own private website, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be pretty significantly more affordable than on Airbnb, because the fees
Mm.
aren't there and the service fees aren't there. And usually their
Yeah.
cleaning fee is a little bit lower, and their
Yeah.
cancellation policies might be a little bit better. So always try to do your due diligence of finding those people directly, because they will appreciate having that one-on-one relationship with you there, instead of the middleman of some management company in between.
I love that, and I've actually never thought about that. So thank you. It's
You're
true because Airbnb does take like a huge. I had a rental property that we Airbnb'd, and they took like crazy fees from the host, and then also passed on crazy fees to the end user. So that's a great idea, and it's funny because now that I look back, I did that once. I was like, oh, let me see this place. It was like Casa Nua, in Bali, and I don't know. I like it's like out of sight, out of mind. So if you've considered leading retreats, um, pros and cons. Like let's talk about that for a minute because I think that's important. I'll go from my side. I've done it. I've done it all. I've done it all.
yeah,
And
right.
going to an all inclusive is so easy. And when I say all inclusive means like you don't have to hire the cook, even, it's like just you just show up and everything's like wrapped, signed, sealed, delivered, and you don't have to move a dime. Which is great and comes with fees because somebody else has to manage, you know, it just comes with fees. Now, doing it at an Airbnb type location, private residence, um, you're now having to figure out how you're going to feed people. So you might incur a lot more of expenses. You might have allotted $700 for food, and then it came out to be $1,500 because of this, that, and so there's a lot for you logistically wise to manage. Um,
Which comes at a
um,
time expense for you
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Maybe it's
exactly.
$1,500 in materials like your groceries, but it's also potentially 500, 700, $1,000 worth of your time as
Your
well.
time,
Yeah.
exactly. So, what would you say is the like your like ideal scenario, like working with a venue? What's the like? If I could do this all day long,
Yeah. So we actually had this. Most of our retreats in the last couple years have honestly been ideal scenarios, but there was a retreat that we did in Costa Rica last September where it actually was like an Airbnb style house.
hmm
It was three different houses, but we had a local retreat manager. Like she specializes in running retreats in Costa Rica, so she has those local contacts. She handled the contracting phase with the Airbnb outside of Airbnb. She handled the chef. She handled the transfers. She got like she did everything first.
Ooh,
Again, came at a fee. Costa Rica was not
yeah,
our most profitable retreat, but both Chloe and I walked away from that being like, wow, like that level of support and help was
yeah,
amazing. And so now, pretty much since then, we try our best to make sure that we have some sort of local retreat on-site manager, because not only are they going to help you with the logistics of getting the ferry and the transfer and the local chef, but also they have the connections of like,
yeah,
oh, you probably don't want to do the sailboat on this day because it's a Sunday and that's the like locals day to go out on the boat and it's going to be too busy. Like those are
yeah,
pieces of knowledge that, although I lived in Costa Rica, I'm not going to remember every single like local inside knowledge piece. So I would say that's kind of our ideal scenario, is like
Hmm.
having either like multiple residents nearby or one big house where it just feels like a really cozy container, but having somebody helping us manage all of those little pieces is one of our favorites. I mean, we've done them at boutique hotels, which is also really nice because you get that sense of like mom and pop authentic local vibe, but everyone gets their own rooms, which is really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
We've done like massive 13-bedroom Airbnbs. We've done, like you said, we've done it all.
We've done it all.
And it just kind of depends on like figuring out what works best for you. I would say if you're a
Yeah.
solo, like you're a coach, you're a business owner, you're a community owner, and you want to run a retreat, like we're helping manage a retreat for a sobriety coach. She has like 40 people signed up like that because her women want it, but she doesn't
Oh my
have the
God, amazing.
time to be able to put it together, right? So I would say if you're like someone who doesn't have a business partner or an assistant or a team helping you pull it together, definitely working with some sort of like retreat expert manager or a local person who, you know, has the connections with. And that's something that we do quite a bit now for communities who are looking to run retreats, as we help manage all the back end logistics that you might not even think about, like
Yeah.
things that you might need.
Yeah. No, I love that. And um, there's a essence to leading retreats as like you, the expert. Like, for example, like I'm so good at like planning things, but because then I'm on to the next thing, I'm like, oh, small details, and those small details are what make the big difference at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day. And I love how you talked about like the time being an expense, but it's also the experience that people are going to leave with, that you'll get repeat clients. So like I always talk about lifetime customer value. Like I've had people come to, you know, two, three of my retreats, and it's because they're getting this like amazing, powerful experience that only you can lead, right? Like no one's going to lead that session where you're going to take them through your like proprietary framework, you know, with your knowledge.
Exactly.
um so it's almost best to have that like next level of support. And if you can't afford that level of support yet, uh start small. Like your first retreat doesn't have to be this like big, massive, like let's schlep, you know, across the world to a place that I've never been to a place I never, you know, I don't know anybody at. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh,
always like to,
totally. Totally. My first retreat, I finished my yoga teacher training in Sydney in April 2017. I booked a deposit for a retreat in July of 2017, 2 hours, not even 2 hours, an hour south of Sydney. We had 15
yeah,
people come, and it was literally just like in the Royal National Park in Sydney, and we didn't have to go in, like we just drive an
yeah,
hour
we're
south.
just right
We have
there.
a guest, and just like you said, we have a contact, a colleague who booked two retreat venues, like two Airbnbs near each other, and she's having and in local in Florida, and she's having kind of a hard time selling it. And I said, well, what's the cancellation policy? Could you just like cancel one of those other Airbnbs and just maybe make it a retreat for 6 people? It's your first one. Like make it
Right.
small, make it
Exactly.
intimate, learn the ins and outs. What do you like to do? What don't you like to do? And I
Exactly.
will say, with the logistics piece, it having some sort of support, like I said, either it's a partner or it's a retreat manager or it's a local person, perhaps even just a VA to handle some of the back end stuff.
Yeah.
When you are so focused on the logistics of, okay, 8 people are taking this van this way, I've got 7 people who are allergic to gluten, I've got this, I've got that, it takes you away from being in your zone of genius and
Yeah.
your
Exactly.
expertise and your presence with them, which is essentially, apart from being in a beautiful place in the world, they're going with you for a
They're
reason
going
and
with
they
you.
want you. Yeah,
Yes. So
exactly.
yeah,
And
if you're
we,
like dealing with the kitchen because like the food's not correct, then you're not having the powerful conversations with your clients that could maybe lead you to, you know, them enrolling in your coaching program or your, you know, teacher training or whatever it is that, you know, because
yes.
I always tell people like your retreat should be part of your bigger business strategy. It's not just like, oh, let me lead a retreat and then peace out. It's like
Yeah, it's part of
a
the funnel
key
almost. Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
key piece of the puzzle. You know?
Mm-hmm.
um,
Or it's a part of almost like an upsell to get more time with you. So it's like
yeah,
they've been in your coaching program for 3 years
right.
and they want that one-on-one time with you again. Or Yeah, like
Exactly.
we've had someone come to us like, hey, I want to lead a retreat. I don't know how. I'd love to work with you guys. He's a fitness instructor, and he's like, my people just want more time with me in the gym, but I
Yeah.
literally can't put any more hours in. So why don't I just do one retreat where it's intimate and 8 people get like 24/7 me. And so like there's ways that you can like you just be strategic about why you want to host this retreat. Some teachers think
Exactly.
a lot of people in the industry are just like, I just want to travel and get paid or just have it for free. And it's like, you have no idea how much work actually goes in behind the scenes to make a great retreat.
Yeah.
And they realize that very quickly as they get into the nitty gritty of
Yeah.
managing 10 plus personalities, 10 plus allergies, 10 plus yoga experience levels, like travel experience levels. Most of
Yeah.
what we do is a lot of coaching just in how to travel internationally. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot and it's also amazing. And you really have to love what you're doing and be connected to your why. Like, why are you hosting your retreat? Like you said, like being strategic, where in the funnel or the customer ecosystem, like where does this fit in there?
Exactly. It's funny, like, I don't know, do you get asked this question from people like, what has been your favorite retreat that you've led? And then you're like, please don't ask me that. So I don't know. I kind of almost want to ask you that, and see if like one is like I have a couple because they were just like so memorable. Like we got engaged on a retreat.
Oh, how special.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, that was my favorite. But then the other one, I don't know, I guess like I bring my husband to all my retreats because he's like my number one like go guy.
Oh, I wish
He,
my husband would do that. He's like afraid of yoga. I don't know why. We've been together 11 years and he will not like it's so
like,
crazy.
yeah, no, Marcel's definitely not afraid of yoga, but we also like, I think most of our retreats are also very strategic. We go to like a lot of surf spots.
Right.
So we're like, oh, Bali. Of course he's coming. You know what I mean? Of course he's
Yeah,
coming.
totally.
But he's also like such a I'm more of like the creator go and he's more like supporter. Like he's a great team leader. So he does a lot of those like connections. He has like the great conversations with people. Not that I don't, and that's like his. I'm like, Marcel, you make friends with a rock,
Right. Well, and it's
and
also
that's great.
always great on retreats having a male perspective because a lot of retreats just inherently attract a lot of women. Like we've had
A lot of
retreats that
women.
have been fully women and but we didn't
Yeah,
market it that way. Like it just
right.
happened to be that it became an all women retreat, which is special too, but it is always nice to have a male perspective because when you look at it from a yoga perspective, the feminine is that Shakti. It's that like
Hmm.
creation and it's this like whirling pool of energy. When you get 18 women in the Dominican Republic jungle with no Wi-Fi, you can imagine how much energy is there. But when you bring a male in, that Shiva, the holder of the space,
Yeah,
and and we've been so lucky that the men we attract on our retreats are freaking phenomenal men, like stand-up men, where you really get to see the feminine, both from men and women, rest down a little bit into the
yeah,
holder of the space with the masculine. And so I love having men on retreat. Like I'm one day I will get Sam to go with me. Like again, it's going to have to be specifically like a surf retreat,
right.
but but yeah, I love that.
So, okay, so maybe I'm not going to ask you your favorite. How about like what's been the one retreat or like the one experience where you were like, ah, fuck, like you're just like something just totally, wrench in the plan.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think that'll be more fun.
Very easy. So we hosted a retreat in Asheville, North Carolina. That just happened to be an all women's retreat too, which was exactly how it was supposed to be. However, although we knew like minutes wise how far away we were from places, GPS doesn't always figure out like, oh, but you're on a really windy, really
Oh
steep mountain road. It's going to take you double the amount of time. We
yeah.
brought in our own private chef. She's incredible. She's been on a couple retreats with us. But we got to the house and there was basically no basics in the house. So we had to go to the store and get the olive oil and get the salt and get the garlic, get all the things. And that drive is 45 minutes one way. So
Yeah.
every time that we would get to like maybe day 3, when you realize, shit, we're running out of eggs. Oh gosh, we need this or what, like we'd have to make that trek back and forth. And so, like you said, like that that estimated grocery bill was supposed to be around 800, and I think we capped somewhere around 1200 because there was so many basics that are expensive that we needed, and we went through so many paper towels because there was no hand towels in the house. We're in the middle of nowhere. It was a beautiful retreat, like stunning. We were on a, like, basically like had 100 miles of hiking trails. We had a creek, there was a hot tub, we had a great time. But from the logistics point of view, that was a very big point in learning for us. Was
Yeah.
remote is great, but like, God forbid someone got hurt, we would have
Yeah.
been an hour away from a hospital. So keeping in mind some of those logistics, like how far are you from a grocery store if you need something, from a pharmacy, from a hospital, like that's going to make or break sometimes your customer relationship if something were to
Yeah.
happen and we didn't think about those types of details that could potentially be life or death in some experiences. I think sometimes as retreat leaders or teachers or leaders wanting or fantasizing about becoming a retreat leader, we forget about the real realities of what can happen while you travel. And I've heard of some really, really crazy stories of retreat leaders hurting themselves while on retreat, having to go to the hospital, of guests
Yeah.
getting into trouble, like safety wise. And those are the risks that you really have to weigh up, like whether you're willing to take that on. And if you are, like,
Yeah.
speak to your lawyer and get a really good rock solid contract.
Yeah.
That's one of my biggest pieces of advice. Like,
Yeah.
spend the money, get the contract, and
Get the
think
contract.
everything through. Something that Chloe and I do really well is after every retreat, Asheville was a big one, was we sit down and do like a total lessons learned. Like, what do we
Yeah.
do differently? What worked? What didn't work? How did we work together? What would we not do again? Or what are things that we need to add to our contract because we learned that this could happen? And those are things that we take back to our lawyer, and then they include it into the contract.
Yeah. No, I've been working with my lawyer the last few weeks, like really like organizing a lot of like my coaching programs and just again, like keeping yourself super, super safe. And I'll tell you one of my funniest, not funniest, super scary. So we're in Nicaragua. Again, it was kind of like a surf, acro, like all the great things. And of course, had to be my buddy, right? My buddy came on the retreat, all is well. And then all of a sudden, we're like, where'd he go? We're like,
Mm,
where's Chris? He comes back 2 days later. He had like made friends with some Australian, no offense, Australians,
classic,
some Australian
classic.
expat who was making acid, like just straight up had like an acid lab. And Chris went on a 2 day, like drug induced, like journey.
Yeah.
I was like, what the F, dude?
Yeah. You're like, I'm go with the flow, but this was not part of the itinerary.
Like, no, this is no, like, no, no, no. So now, again, like you earn or you learn, right? Like,
Hmm.
big learning opportunity. Like, now we have like buddy systems, and yes, that contract saying like, if you leave our property, nothing, we're not liable for
Disclaimer of
anything.
liability. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Now
super
looking back,
important.
it was, hilarious because we're like, of course, you find the one random person in this like remote area of Nicaragua who just happened to have this like drug lab. I mean, it was just
Right.
so crazy. But you guys, I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, with great power comes lots of responsibility. And as
Hmm.
retreat leaders, like, those are things that you want to look at is, you are in charge of a lot of people, and you want to not only have all your ducks in a row in terms of like legalities, but also you like having the tough conversations, having um the rules set. It's because if not, if there's
Yeah.
no stop sign, people don't stop. Like,
Well, it's also supposed to be a safe space, right? And I know that word gets thrown around all the time now,
no,
but
no, but it's
specifically
true.
on retreat, depending on the style of retreat, some of our retreats we actually call tours because it is more tour based. Thailand, we hopped
Mhm.
around to a couple different places. Peru,
Yeah,
in this upcoming April, we're going to 4 or 5 different spots. So we actually call that more
yeah,
of a tour. Whereas when it's a retreat, we are in one spot and we're doing excursions every day and exploring, but there is that kind of undercurrent of like a safety net. And
Yeah.
when there are house rules on our first day, we sit down for dinner after everyone's done our little like ceremony and we say hi and we do intentions. I'm like master logistics in our team, and I sit down and I give you the house rules, like
Yeah.
what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. You're an adult, you can make your own decisions, but for the safety and the general like feel good of the group, like you're allowed to drink what you want, but if
Yeah.
you get too drunk, like we're going to have a conversation because people are supposed to feel safe so that they
Yeah.
can regulate in their nervous system.
Yeah.
And if there's drugs involved, if there's alcohol involved, if you just leave for 3 days, some people get really affected by even just somebody not going on an excursion. There are some
Yeah.
guests that get really worked up, like, well, why didn't Jimmy come with us? Is she okay? Do I need to stay back? And it's like, there is this consensus
Yeah.
that we're in it as a team, as a
Yeah.
community. And so, yeah, those house rules are super important. And these are things that, as a first time retreat leader, you might not know and you'll learn as you go, but why not have the support of a manager who's done this before help you support you on your way so you can not have to make some really painful mistakes or potentially costly mistakes.
Yeah, for real. Well, I'm so glad we were able to kind of go deep into that because I know a lot of my community, like our retreat leaders, I have, I teach courses on leading retreats, and there's always something that we can learn from other colleagues. So thank you, Kelly, for being
Yeah.
here today. In the show notes, we'll put the links to your social media and your website. Um, Enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. And once again, thank you for your wisdom and knowledge. Please share this podcast, listen to it over and over again if you've been thinking about leading retreats. You can, again, always contact me for my Profitable Retreats course. And we have a retreat coming up, a business retreat in California, January. It's part of a month-long mastermind, so it's a really beautiful experience. And again, you can check the show notes for that. All right, everybody, tune in, rate the podcast, and we'll see you again. Bye.
Thank you.